Police watchdog IPID registering a criminal case against a National Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole in connection, of course, with his alleged failure to cooperate with an investigation into the murder of top cop Kinnear. But the very latest on this, we've unleashed Barry Bateman to bring us everything that he has on this. Hello to you, Barry. So there's a lot to talk about. We need to talk about frustrations, not cooperating, but first can we talk about these letters that have just dropped? What's happened?
Indeed, Gareth, big news breaking on Eyewitness News this morning, and I've since managed to get sight of two letters. The one sent to National Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole and the other sent to the Minister Barry Bateman. Minister Barry Bateman letter is a little bit more detailed. It goes into the background of what we're dealing with here. In January last year, Khehla Sitole himself had asked IPID to investigate the circumstances surrounding police's failure to act on Hawks investigations and what led to the murder of Kinnear. You'll remember he was gunned down in cold blood. He was also linked into very high-profile investigations in the Western Cape. But what we learn from these letters now is that, and I'm going to go through this, I've got one open here, in April last year, again in June last year, and then later in the year in November, these attempts were made by IPID investigators to get the National Police Commissioner to come and elaborate on certain facts, on issues, his role in certain decisions. And on every occasion, he simply fobbed them off. He was always busy with something else, or he was never available, or his subordinates and office was left to deal with the investigators. It has got to the point of frustration. The head of IPID now, citing parts of the IPID Act, has opened up a case at Pretoria Central Police Station for the General's failure to cooperate in this investigation.
But it does seem to, if you look at the optics of the story as well, and help me understand if I'm slightly off track here, that it's coming out, Barry, as a way of making it look like the National Police Commissioner is deliberately not cooperating. That's what it's starting to look like, that everything's being done to try and investigate this in the open and to be free and fair to come to a conclusion, but it's being made to look like he's not cooperating deliberately. Am I off track?
No, I think you're quite right there. If you just look at that timeline, it was over several months that the investigators tried to reach out to him and to make himself available. They even met with, I think it was a legal head within the SAPS, and put to that person what is needed from the General. So it wasn't like, he was going to be caught off guard. He knew full well. But despite this, numerous attempts were simply failed. But Gareth, I think what's important, and perhaps how we should view this, we can cast our way back to a court judgment which related to the so-called grabber. And we know, let me just quickly remind you, that's the one related to the ANC's elective conference, where it was alleged that the police were trying to procure a police grabber, a piece of crime intelligence technology, at a severely, heavily overinflated price. The allegation was that that money was going to be funneled to bribe delegates at the ANC's national elective conference. Remember that one? Well, there were documents that were classified in that particular case, and the only person, or the person to declassify them, was Khehla Sitole. Got to the point IPID went to the courts, and the courts found against Khehla Sitole that he was obstructing justice, essentially, that he was not cooperating. He refused to declassify these documents to allow this investigation into very serious corruption to proceed. So now we have another case, another very high-profile investigation, and we've got the national head of our police who is not cooperating with the investigation. It's certainly very worrying. It
is very worrying, and the problem is with this repeated frustrating and not answering of questions, not making himself available, people are going to start asking, well, what do we do to move forward on this? IPID is involved, the courts are involved, there just seems to be very little cooperation. What happens, and from who?
I'll tell you where it can go, and it's not just those people involved. The President is also involved. It has been nearly 4 months since the President Cyril Ramaphosa gave Khehla Sitole notice of suspension, and he had to submit reasons why he should not be suspended. And that relates to that grabber matter and the court findings made against him. 4 months, and the President still hasn't made a decision on that. Well, here, I think, adds more ammunition if you're going to be dealing with somebody who does not adhere to his duties as the National Commissioner of the Police. I think the pressure is on the President now to make a decision based solely on what we know about in the grabber matter, but this certainly would be back of mind and compound it.
I'm curious to know two things. One is, has there been any reaction from Khehla Sitole's officers? That this is quite new. I don't imagine there is yet. I'm sure you're looking for that. And the other, of course, is the police minister. Where do we stand as far as knowing what he has said about this?
No, no response yet. Interestingly, we are sitting on the 27th of January. These letters were handed over yesterday. So we must be mindful as well of certain things at play here. We know that there is no love lost between the minister and the National Police Commissioner, and a day after these very damning letters are served, it gets leaked to the media and it's out there. So there is, and this is part of the problem with the SAPS. There's always been this contestation, this infighting within management between the political heads and the national heads, and I think this is probably just more of that playing out. Nevertheless, if this is somebody who is not cooperating in a very serious investigation, there should be consequences.
And we're going to no doubt stay on top of the story. Barry Bateman with his ear to the ground with the latest, as always. It's a complicated story, I know. It was difficult for me to follow as well, but it makes sense now when you explain it the way you have, Barry. So you're going to try and come full circle for us on this and keep an eye on reaction to that throughout the day here on eNCA, as Barry always does. The moment he knows the latest, of course, we'll bring it to you here on the South African Morning. But we are going to go a little bit nerdy in a moment. Weekly